want to welcome to the program Dr. Titi Afolabi, second-year resident physician in internal medicine at Mass General Hospital, a member of the Mass General Brigham Organizing Committee, and now, I guess, a member we're waiting for the official word for the National Labor Relations Board of the Committee for Interns and Residents, which, of course, some in our audience may be familiar with. We had spoken to some representatives from the Montefiore hospital strike and labor action that was happening here in New York some months ago. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So give us the backstory on how we got to where we are today, and then you can let us know where we are today in terms of what's been happening up in Boston.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a resident, which is a doctor who has completed medical school, but is still in training to obtain a full license to practice. And I work at Mass General Hospital, which you mentioned, which is part of a bigger hospital system that includes other hospitals in Boston. And over the last few years, there's been an effort amongst the other residents, as well as the fellows who are also training, but a little bit further ahead in their career, to come together and to use our collective kind of power to bargain for benefits in our contract and for benefits for our patients. And it was kind of born out of necessity when COVID happened and there was so much stress put on the healthcare system and on our hospitals and on our physical bodies. And it's just kind of grown since then. And there's been a wave of unionization across the country. For example, you interviewed residents at Montefiore in New York. So it took a long time to get where we are today, which is we just finished our election, which was held over the course of a week. And we had a really great turnout and we won. And so, as you mentioned, we are awaiting final confirmation from the NLRB, but we're very excited about finally being able to come together and to sit down with our employers and talk about the things that we think will make our lives and our patients' lives better.
Well, residents are notoriously overworked. I mean, and it's this multi-year process to being able to practice independently, and you have to go through it, right? And I know this, one of my closest friends is a resident right now, no time off, essentially, underpaid, plus the fact that a lot of people, I'm sure, some of your colleagues have student debt from going through medical school. Can you explain just some of the conditions that you all have to face as residents?
Yeah, exactly. So we matched to a specific program, and that's the program you're expected to or the hospital that you're expected to stay at for the duration of your training. And so there's no power to negotiate really throughout your training, which can be like 7 years or even more. And I think we know that we are signing up for a very difficult job. I think the nature of the job requires a lot of training and it requires working hard. And I think we all love what we do. I certainly do. I think I have the best job ever. I always say that. But at the same time, we also feel that we deserve basic human rights like every other employer. And that includes being able to pay our bills and live comfortably in the city that we work, which is Boston, which is very expensive. And a lot of these academic institutions are in pretty expensive cities across the nation as well. And so I think it's the combination of being overworked, but also underpaid that really is just, it's too much to bear. And that's really what brought us to this point.
When I've heard stories, and like you mentioned that we've spoken to representatives from Montefiore of what residents have to go through, it really is a shock to me that this hasn't happened before now. Has there been like attempts in the past, or is it that this dynamic and Boston is like, I don't know, one of the top 4 or 5 most expensive cities in the country probably by now. And frankly, UMass Medical, I mean, this is, or Mass General, I should say, is a massive corporation, essentially. I mean, it's a massive institution generating a lot of money. Like, what is it that is different? Is it just that sort of that dynamic of like they're making so much cash, the pay has not kept up. There's more medical debt, I would imagine, than there has been at any other time in our history, or I should say, student debt. Is that why this hasn't happened before now?
That's a really great question. I'm not too sure personally why this hasn't happened before. I think part of it is the fact that medicine has always been traditionally composed of like a kind of homogenous demographic, namely like white men and white people. And I think now that there are more diverse faces in medicine, there's been an increased pressure to adjust to that change in the demographic. For example, I come from a low-income family, and a lot of my colleagues in medical school and even in residency are able to kind of use their family wealth to help support them. I don't really have that option. So for me, unionization is really, it's really important for me to be able to do my job. And so I'm part of the movement that has created this situation today. And I think also, as I mentioned, COVID was a really big stressor on us as well. And yeah, I think the older generation of physicians has a kind of a different outlook. I've noticed that a lot of our attendings will say things like, it was a lot harder when I trained, and this is what you signed up for, and it's just temporary, and all of those things, which I think are wrong.
Folks love to shut the door after they get through. But what other cohorts of workers are unionized within the Mass General system? I mean, because are residents like the as opposed to the attending? I mean, I don't think there's any move to unionize the attending physicians, but I would imagine at one point, like when this cohort of residents becomes attending physicians at one point, they're going to be more amenable to unionization. But are there what other cohorts are unionized in that system? Apologies, folks, but we have Dr. Titi Afolabi back on by phone. So, Doctor, you were saying, I was asking if, what are you guys the last cohort at Mass General to unionize? And this is, we should say, at Mass General Brigham Hospital, which is one of in the Mass General, I guess, network, I guess you would call. Are you guys I think you were just about to say before we had these technical difficulties that you guys are the first cohort of workers at the hospital to unionize.
Yes, we are at Brigham, our partner institution. The nurses are unionized, but for the most part, most working groups are not unionized in our hospital system. So I'm really hoping that this kind of creates the wave of unionization amongst the workers. I think that residents and fellows unionizing hopefully will galvanize other workers to do the same. And I think that is part of the fear that the administration has.
You're saying part of the fear the administration has is this is going to inspire others. Give us, and there's about 75,000 employees in Mass General. I guess the Mass General Brigham is they merged, but they're the largest employee in Massachusetts.
Right, exactly. And I think it's really important that they lead the effort to make sure that their workers are able to have the benefits that they need in order to do their jobs, because their jobs are so closely linked to patient care and quality patient care.
Give us a sense of like what happens now. There was a vote, like you mentioned. There was it was 75%, I think, in favor of unionization. What happens now?
Yeah, so as soon as the NLRB kind of confirms the results of the election, we are going to begin kind of soliciting feedback from the bargaining unit of other residents and fellows about what are some of the issues that they would like us to see to bring forward and begin kind of negotiating our contract, which we anticipate might take a while to do.
Okay. And how long do you know if the process for the National Labor Relations Board to like certify the vote? Do you have any idea?
I think it should be pretty soon, within the next week or so. I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, that quick. Okay.
I think that there's an opportunity for each side to challenge the vote, and I do not know if we will be doing that. I doubt it. But.
And what has been the general reaction to the vote? I mean, I think you alluded to some of the attending physicians sort of poo-pooing the thing, but what has been the general reaction at the hospital?
Well, I think people are really excited about this. I think it's something that we've been talking about for so long, and it's been it's been such a painstaking process of, I think the process of forming a union is, the burden really is on the employees, and it's widely disproportionate for us to organize 2,500 trainees without being able to use social media early on and things like that. And so we're just really excited that this is finally happening. It feels very surreal. I think that's the general sense that people have. I think the administration is, I guess, disappointed, but I think overall people are really looking towards what's going to come next and how we'll see the benefits kind of start to kick in.
Can you give us like a timeline, or at least from your perspective, of how the union drive developed? Were you part of the initial organizing? At what stage did someone reach out to you, a fellow like a resident, and say, let's go get a cup of coffee, I want to talk to you about something? How did that happen?
Yeah, I think the very first conversations about this happened before I joined, which was, I think, around 2020 when COVID really hit the hospitals. And it kind of stayed in the early stages, even when I joined the effort, which was really just trying to have conversations with as many people as possible to let them know that we were thinking about doing this and what their thoughts were. So I kind of heard rumblings about it before I actually joined the program. But I knew that it was something that I definitely wanted to be part of. It's been a long time coming. So it's been about 2.5 years of just really like having conversations with people. And then finally the card launching process was faster. And then the election happened soon after then.
Was there like was there a sort of, how, I guess, like strategically was these conversations laid out? Like, how were they sort of like ever increasing concentric circles, or I mean, because we're talking, as far as I can tell, just there's about 2,000 potential folks, right, in this union.
Yeah, there's 2,500 of us total, and I think maybe 1,600-ish people voted. It was, I mean, I think that's really the benefit of working with CIRs, because they have all of the staff and the experience to help us organize the body of other physicians who we needed to have conversations with, because it was just, it was really difficult to figure out who everyone was, where they worked, how to reach them. But and in the end, I think it's really shown that it's been worth it, and the process really worked.
I'm not super familiar with how like the resident process happens, but I presume you have friends from med school at other institutions around, I don't know, the country. Like, are you hearing, where does your unionization drive fit in with what your understanding is, to the extent that you know of, like, what other residents, interns across the country are doing?
Yeah, I think everyone that I know wants to be in a unionized program if they're not already in one. We are definitely not the first. There's many around the country already. So some of my friends are already in programs that are unionized. And those that aren't are definitely interested, especially now that we have won our election in kicking off their process. I know CIR employers are getting requests nonstop from programs around the country. So I think it's really something that has already started. This wave has started already. And I think now that we've won, it's really going to galvanize around the country as well. So both within our own institution and also around the country for other resident and physician groups.
Well, it's an inspiring story, and I think it's both interesting and inspiring from the impact that there's some indication that there's a diversity happening with the folks who become residents, and both in terms of like the diversification that's happening within the context of the union movement, that you have doctors becoming a part of that. Dr. Titi Afolabi, the second-year resident physician, internal medicine, Mass General Hospital, and now a member of the Mass General Brigham organizing committee of the of new union there. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, and we'll check back in to see how it goes after that National Labor Relations Board makes its decision.
Thank you so much for having me and for covering the story. We really appreciate your support.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.